What it do, tube? Welcome back to another episode of Scotty Says I Am Your Host. And we all saw it. And now it is abundantly clear to me that this season for the defending champion, LA Rams, is over. I have been reluctant to call it, to put the proverbial fork in them, because I held out hope that somehow they would turn things around. I held out hope that somehow McG would get my messages. I've been sending messages via YouTube, and I hoped that somehow it would get through to McGenius. But it has become quite clear to me that the time has come to put the fork in them. And not just the baby fork. It's time to put the dinner fork in them. Now, I got a barbecue rib slab fork, the big fork, and I can't quite bring myself to put the big fork in them, but I'm going to put the dinner fork in them. Because the Rams are done. They went down to Tampa Bay, and there was so much riding on this game. More at stake for the Rams than for the Bucks and the old goat. But in the end, the Rams choked that game away also. And although they are mathematically still alive, at this point in time, the best I see them doing is somewhere around 9-8 or 8-9, and that is not enough to get into the playoffs in the NFC. Not when they've already lost twice to them damn Niners. Lost to them damn Cowboys. And there's 2 games with the shockingly surprising Seattle Seahawks left to play. And at this point, I don't hold out much hope that they can handle the Hawks either. And so with this upcoming game against the Cardinals on Sunday, I suspect there's a good chance that they can defeat the Gridbirds at the Palace in Inglewood. But it's too little. And it's too late. So now it comes time for the postmortem. What happened to these fellas? And I hope you have been watching my previous episodes. Clearly McGenius has not. But I've been prescribing a recipe to help turn this sinking ship around. And so it's clear that McGenius is not heeding the words of advice, and he's going down with the ship. Let's start with a familiar theme. The LA inactives to start the game. Who was inactive down in Tampa Bay? Well, on offense, inactive, street clothes, did not dress, once again, Bryce Perkins. The most dynamic quarterback that's not playing in the NFL. Bryce Perkins gives you a whole other dynamic at quarterback, and there is no explanation for why he is not QB2. Except for maybe one thing, and we'll get to it. Who else was inactive against Tampa Bay? Lance McCutcheon, once again, in street clothes, did not dress. Coach's decision, a bad one. Now, I've said repeatedly, the Rams desperately need a deep threat. And yet, their best option to provide such a threat, McGenius repeatedly leaves inactive, in street clothes, and that is Lance McCutcheon. Why, McGenius? Why, Mr. McWonder? I wonder. Well, I'm going to posit a possible explanation. We'll get to that. Who else was inactive against Tampa Bay? Well, Kendall Blanton, tight end. Again, McGenius is so hungry for that Higbee soup that he'd rather leave a breaking down Higbee in the game, all game, no catches, than to try some variety, some versatility with a tight end that has some dynamic playmaking capabilities like Kendall Blanton. Who else was left inactive on offense against Tampa? Tutu. And I will tell you right now, I don't believe in Tutu. So I don't really question that decision so much because, as I have spoken about in previous episodes, everyone has been long awaiting the return of the imaginary Van Jefferson. And you saw him at work Sunday in Tampa Bay. Did you see that egregious drop that he had? Oh, it was awful. The imaginary Van Jefferson, that's the savior. Everybody kept saying, wait till Van Jefferson returns so he can drop chunk yard passes and then get no more targets the rest of the game. And so with these players all inactive, McGee rolls the cart with now 3 wheels left down to Tampa. And the offense puts up its most putrid offensive performance of the season. I mean, it was a stinker. Something wrong. Stinking. How awful was it, you ask? Did you see it? The Rams had only 12 possessions the whole game, and of those 12, 8 of them were 3 and outs. 8 out of 12. 3 and outs. There were 9 Ram punts. Oh, it was a punt fest. 9 Ram punts and an equal amount of only 9 first downs the entire game for the offense. Putrid, stanky foul. It was ugly. And so the only offense was provided courtesy of Soup. And Soup turned around and made a terrible mistake by sliding instead of getting a first down to try and clinch the game late in the fourth quarter. A bad mistake. And Dr. Who, the poltergeist, defended Soup and said, well, he did the exact right thing. Well, that's your homie. That's your boy. So you're in his corner. But that was a terrible mistake by Soup. And he was the only offense they had. There's a sickness with the Rams. There's a rot that has set in. And you can see it in the post game with the corrosive comments of ashes. And McGenius himself made some very, very interesting comments. But we'll get back to that. As bad as the Rams' offense was, the defense did try to hold its own most of the game. And I'll tell you what, Tampa Bay and the old goat, they ain't very good either. And that's why I thought the Rams had a chance to go down there and win that game. And right up until the last minute of the game, they had the game still, despite all of their futility. And that just goes to show you how awful Tampa Bay is offensively. These two teams, Tampa and the Rams, 31st and 32nd in rushing. At the bottom now, the last and next to last in rushing in the NFL on the season. Bottom dwellers, cellar dwellers, catfish, bottom feeders. Despite the Rams' futility on offense, despite the poltergeist repeatedly trying to throw one away, and Tampa Bay not accepting the haunted gift, despite the ugly nature, the stank of the offense, Tampa Bay was no better. Tampa Bay trailed at halftime 7-6. And that 7 points the Rams scored came courtesy of a Soup breakaway touchdown. And at the end of the third quarter, Tampa Bay trailed 13-6. Thanks to a couple of more Matt Gay field goals. LA is last, and we've talked about this repeatedly now. The Rams are last in the NFL in fourth quarter points scored. And once again, the Rams offense mustered a grand total of zero fourth quarter points. None. Not a goose egg. Not a damn thing. On the season, the Rams have a 71-10 point differential in the fourth quarter. That's last at the very bottom of the NFL. 0 points again this Sunday. And so they allowed Tampa and the old goat to snatch that game, that victory away from them in the last seconds. But I can't stress too much about the loss because the team looks bad. As I say, the defense tried to hold its own, and I feel for Bobby Wagner. B-Wags, he must be kicking himself. He left Seattle, and look at Seattle. He came to the Rams, and look at the Rams. B-Wags had a great game. He led the team in tackles. He blocked a field goal. He hurdled over the line and blocked great game. But it wasn't enough. Ashes. He spoke very harshly in the postgame. And the criticism is warranted, I will say, but Ashes dropped an interception that would have made a difference in the end zone. And Ashes, some things are better left kept in-house, not blurted out all over the media because you're aggravated. But there's corrosion, there's rot at the core with the Rams. And what is really going on? I'll get to it shortly. So a quick look at the numbers. Matty from the D threw the ball 27 times. That's not too far outside of the 25-20 rule. And the Rams did, in fact, rush more than 20 times. 22, I believe, to be precise. Problem is, the Rams had 68 rushing yards on the day. Horrific. They averaged 3.7 yards per play. Danky. They had a grand total of 206 total yards versus Tampa Bay, their lowest offensive output of the season. Probably the lowest output they've had in years. Things aren't getting better, ladies and gentlemen. They're going the other way. They're getting worse. As I say, Tampa wasn't much better. They only had 51 rushing yards. They're the worst rushing team in the NFL. But they did at least crack 4.1 yards per play offensively. And the old GOAT had 323 passing yards thanks to that last drive in large part, which won them the game. And the Rams defense, for as well as they played most of the game, looked awful. They dropped into a soft shell prevent, and the old GOAT ate them alive. I said last week that I thought Cam the Grill Akers had toted his last rock for L.A., but boy, was I wrong. The Grill made a return. McGenius doubled back and said, no, we couldn't move him and we need him. Let's see if we can work him back in. Well, the Grill carried the ball 5 times for a grand total of 3 yards. 5 carries, 3 yards, and 0.6 yard per carry average. Thanking. Darrell Henderson had 12 carries for 56 yards, so he was around his average, 4.7 yards per carry. Malcolm Brown had a couple carries. They gave Soup a couple carries, so they eclipsed 20. And were it not for the final breakdown, maybe they could have held on to win. But the way this team looks, maybe it's better that they're out of their misery early as opposed to late. And then the receiving corps. I've been calling for Lance McCutcheon, but they won't hear me. Well, Soup had 8 receptions, 127 yards. He did his thing, broke away, scored a touchdown. But after Soup, the receiving corps is pitiful. A-Rob, a.k.a. the Buster Brown, had 3 catches, 24 yards. And then it just got worse from there, if that were even possible. Malcolm Brown had 1 catch. Brandon Powell had 1 catch for 4 yards. Stoney had a target, no catches, no yards. Van Jefferson, a major drop, no catches, no yards. And all that Higbee breaking down. No catches, no yards. So let's get to the postgame. And let's get to my conjecture as to what may really be going on now. In the postgame, Jalen Ramsey, ashes, spoke harshly, said they don't have dogs on offense, said the defense shouldn't have to run back out there after they get a stop on turnover on downs, said the offense should be able to close out a game, get at least 10 yards in the first down, and he's right. That is true. It would even resonate more if he wasn't dropping interceptions damn near every game. But be that as it may. During the week, in the run-up to the game, Sox, Ashes, was asked about the return of the Grill. And Ashes seemed agitated, perturbed, if you will. And he said he was completely and all about the Grill, that he sided with the Grill. So what is going on with the Grill and McGenius? Let's hear from McGenius himself. He said in the postgame, McGenius said he's sick about the loss, that something has to change. I wonder what? That things cannot go on this way any longer. I've been saying that. McGenius said he doesn't have the answers right now. Well, if he subscribed to my channel, if if he listened to the advice, the warnings I've been giving him all season long, he might have an answer or two. I can see you don't have the answers based on the output of the offense. Well, let me help him out, Mr. McWonder. It's clear he doesn't have the answers. Something has to change, Mr. McWonder? Well, maybe you should fire yourself. Maybe your time as play caller has run its course. Maybe someone else should be calling plays now because you are stale and predictable as a play caller in 2022. And I didn't think I would ever say such a thing. Maybe that's the first change you need to make. But beyond that, you need better personnel, and you've had them. And you can go back. I've been chronicling this since they traded Bobby Trees for a Ham Sammy. You had a proven commodity in Robert Woods, and you shipped him off for a 6th-round draft pick. You felt Stoney would be an adequate replacement. That's a judgment call, a bad one. You and the Sneedster seem to have been drunk on your success. You had Sony Michel in the building. You let him walk. Now you have to pull Malcolm Brown off the street. You have to double back with the grill when you wanted to release him. Because you don't have a viable running game. You knew Big Wit, Big Modi was retiring, and yet you did nothing to upgrade the O-line. You just felt you'd stick no-go boom into the left tackle slot and everything would be peachy. Really? I saw that was an injury waiting to happen, but you didn't? These are judgment calls, bad judgment calls. And so now the team is winless since the bye. And your hopes for the playoffs are little to none. So what's really going on? Well, this is what I have been considering, speculating about, alluding to. Now, we all know the NFL has a race problem. I mean, they just hired a white broadcaster out the booth to be head coach of the Colts with no head coaching experience. You got all these black coordinators that you bypass to pull an announcer out of the booth. Granted, he played in the league, but he has no professional coaching experience. He's the head coach of the Colts. We know about Kaepernick. We know about the Miami Dolphins and the various issues. The NFL has a race problem. They don't want to hire black head coaches. And so, my question, my concern is, does Sean McVay have a race problem? Well, what do you mean? If you recall, going back some years now, Mr. McGenius seems to get into conflict with players quite a bit, and they're almost always black players. Does he have a problem relating to black players? It seems so, the evidence suggests. Let's go way back. Remember Todd Gurley? All of a sudden, there was conflict and consternation between McGenius and Todd Gurley. And then they shipped him off. Let's go back just a season ago to last year. Remember how the Rams started the season, their wide receiver room? Besides Soup, it was Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. It was Deshaun Jackson, and Van Jefferson. Those were your four wideouts. But somewhere along the way, McGenius had a problem with Deshaun Jackson. Do you remember? And Deshaun Jackson ended up asking to be released, and they accommodated, or perhaps McGenius suggested he'd be better off elsewhere. There was a personality issue between McGenius and Deshaun Jackson. And midway through the season, a little before midway in the season, D-Jax was gone. Robert Woods, a core guy since 2017. Now, you say, well, he tore his ACL. Well, Cooper Kupp, Soup, tore his ACL. Remember? 2018, I believe it was. Missed the rest of the season. That was a Super Bowl season. Back with the golfer. Remember? And the Rams and McGenius allowed Soup to recuperate and heal and rehab and come back. They didn't ship him off. But when Robert Woods tore his knee up, he never played another down for the Rams. They shipped him off. There was some kind of consternation between McGenius and Bobby Trees, apparently. Why? Why is there so much conflict with McGee and the black players? The only player that I can think of that McGenius has had an issue with who wasn't black was the golfer himself. And that quarterback position is so vital that they replaced him with the poltergeist. Why are you in conflict with the grill, Mr. McWonder? Why won't you promote Bryce Perkins, a dynamic quarterback who happens to be black? Why do you insist on listing him behind the Wolford, who is a bum? Why, McGenius? Why won't you promote Lance McCutcheon off the practice squad? Why do you leave him in street clothes while Stoney runs loose, dropping passes all over the field? I can't help but wonder. And I've alluded to this. And the way that it's justified is people promote and hire people who look like them. Well, what does that really mean? It's the definition of racism if you're promoting and hiring people who are your complexion. And if you have issues and problems and shipping away people who are not. That's what it looks like to me from here. So now the wheels have totally come off the Rams' cart. And where do we go from here? Well, into an off season of questions, because I doubt that OBJ wants to return to this mess. And that's another point. Why didn't they offer OBJ something worth his while in terms of keeping him around? You saw his contributions in the Super Bowl. Yes, he had an injury, but the organization did, reluctant to make him an offer to keep him in the fold. I can't help but wonder if the legend of Stony Wolf Funk, the Wolford and Stoney and Jake Funk, if they were only elevated because they looked like McGenius. They reminded him of himself. And if that's what's going on, if that's what's at the bottom of all this, you deserve all the losing that's coming your way. So, It looks like we are on a collision course with a sub 500 record now. And, you know, as the losing mounts, it feeds on itself, and the disgruntled personnel and the lack of effort feeds on itself. The old line shuffle continues on. And what hopes we had for a title defense, ashes and smoke. Put a fork in them. The Rams are done. I suspect they'll be able to handle the Cardinals at the Palace, but as I say, too little, too late. No answers, Mr. McGenius? Well, perhaps you need to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you're notified when I drop a new video. And until the next time, which won't be too long from this time, what I need you to do is throw me one of these. Throw it to me now. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll be back to cover what transpires the rest of the way. But I have to tell you, doesn't look good. Something wrong. Stink. And so until next time, my friends, one love.